For those of you who don't know me, I think I know everybody here. I'm Brian Palmucci. I'm the privilege and honor of representing Ward 4 in the City Council. And we're here tonight to discuss a proposal for development by the Galvins, who I think most of you are probably familiar with, as they're neighborhood guys, local business owners in the city. They do a lot of work in the city. So just a couple quick ground rules. When I do a community meeting, I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to be heard. If you have questions, if you have comments, I want to make sure that all of the questions that can be answered get answered. All your comments get heard. But I do ask that we give the folks, whoever's presenting, in this case the Galvins and their attorney, Mr. Fleming, we give them 10, 15 minutes to make a presentation so we can all learn about the project. And then I'll moderate questions and answers and comments, okay? So we just try and give them 10 to 15 minutes uninterrupted. And I promise you, after that, we'll make sure everyone has a chance to be heard. I have a sign-in sheet. Looks like everyone kind of signed in. The reason I do this, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but the reason why I do this, if there's something comes up that that they can't answer a question on tonight, or if it's something city-related and I can't answer a question, I can send out a mailing after I find the answer, and then that way everyone knows what's going on. I think there's like 3 rules, so I only said 2. As I've taken to introducing John, who is our community recorder. John videotapes city council meetings, and school committee meetings, and zoning board meetings, and planning board meetings, and any city councilor that he finds out is having a community meeting. So, and I always say this, I think I can kick him out. So if he's bugging anybody, we'll give him the boot, but he's generally harmless. That being said, this is a public meeting, although it's not in a public location. I'm inclined to let him stay, if everyone's okay with that. But just know that if you want to say something, he posts all this stuff up on YouTube. So if you're concerned about that,
And there's some chiefs over here.
all right, Ian, you're crashing my meeting, you're making a scene. Your nose, Counselor at Large, Ian Mahoney.
I just wanted to make sure you saw me.
Yeah, no, I did. We've all seen you now, Ian. No, I'm just kidding. So, just as it relates to the video, right? If anyone's uncomfortable with speaking because you don't want to be on YouTube, you can wait till I'll have him. I usually have him shut off the camera at some point, so folks aren't comfortable with it. Or if when the meeting breaks up, he'll stop recording, and then you can ask Sean or myself any questions or make any comments if you want. Okay, if you're uncomfortable. So we want to make sure that nobody's ability or situation to be able to weigh in is affected. So. I thank you all for coming. I'm going to let Sean make the pitch in terms of what the project is and why they think it's a good idea. As it relates to this project, there is no filing yet, right? Or have you filed?
We did.
Okay, they did file. Do you have a date?
April 11th.
Okay. Planning. Okay, so sometimes folks file first, sometimes they have the community meeting first. I think these guys are doing it kind of concurrently. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but there will be a public process. Do you need zoning board approval too? Okay.
I'll go through all of it.
Okay, all right. So there'll be 2 opportunities beyond this. This is more informal, right? It's not like we're going to take a vote and then they get a permit and they go out and build. They have to go through a formal process with the city. The planning board would have to give them approval, and then the zoning board would have to give them approval. We can, Sean, as you indicated, we'll speak a little bit more in detail about that. But should you want to weigh in on that process at either of those meetings, which are open to the public, as well as open to public comment, you can send a letter, you can send an email, you can show up in person and weigh in a formal capacity. That's where the permits come from the city. That's how the project would proceed if it's going to proceed. And if you got a mailing about this meeting tonight, you will get a mailing about those 2 meetings as well. I'll send out those dates so folks can weigh in and show you where you can send if you want to mail a letter. Okay? Does that all sound good? We'll let them go. And I always find that I'm the only one who breaks my rule of not interrupting in the 10 to 15 minutes. But have at it, Sean.
That's all right, Brian. We've been through a few of these with Brian. Good evening. My name's Sean Galvin. I'm here with my brothers, Scott. We're partners, and we own Galcon Development. Our proposal is in the neighborhood, as you know, up on California Ave, the stretch between Willard Street and Bates. It's right on the corner of California and Bates before you cross over, and head down back towards the Biondi section of California Ave. So, this is probably too small, so I apologize, it's kind of dark in here. Willard Street, California Ave. This is the property right here, it's the big gray house that's on the corner of as I said, of California and Bates.
Does everybody know what that is in the room? Everyone has an idea, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
good, good. This is an area we've taken a lot of interest in. We got involved in it about 10, 12 years ago in California. There used to be a large, I think it was an SRO at some point. Actually, I was just catching up. Mr. Spring was filling me in a little bit. But that was a house that had been abandoned for some time and had actually begun collapsing in on itself. And it was owned by the neighbor who actually lived in the house next door. Well, unfortunately, she passed away and wasn't found for some time in the house. She had a I'll call it a herd of feral cats, about 90 feral cats that she had fed in the neighborhood. We bought the house, the two houses, we tore them down. We actually humanely had worked with an organization that spayed and neutered all of the cats and relocated. And we built our first building at 108 California Avenue. And it's a 10-unit apartment building with parking behind the building. And that's directly behind the Hancock Motor Building. When we purchased that property, one of the requests that came from the neighbors was from the Spillane family, which lived across the street from it. And David Spillane came to me, and his mother was older, and they had intended to move out of the house at some point. And he asked that we wait the summer so that she could have one more summer without building going on across the street. And we did. And after that, and because of that, the family sold us that property. And we built a sister building across the street at 109 California Ave. And that's a 12-unit building. It looks exactly like the one across the street from it. So we've had those two buildings, so coming up on about 10 years or so. And we were very disappointed because we were having trouble renting the units at 109. And the primary reason was here on Willard Street, which used to be President's Monument, had been taken over by a used car dealer. And the folks that had President's took less and less and less space, and eventually they sold out and they moved down to Quincy Memorial down in East Milton Square. So one day I approached the owner of the property and I said, listen, do you mind if I just have our landscapers come over and cut down all the weeds and clean up the yard and sweep it up a little bit? And he basically told me to go jump in the lake. Well,
Was that his exact words, Sean?
well, there were a few more cuss words in there. And I don't know why, because we'd never complained to them. We'd always been good neighbors, and we just wanted to clean the joint up. Well, we found out he didn't own it. He rented it. So we found out who did own it. And ironically enough, it was Dave Spillane, the attorney, who represented the people who owned it. So we made an offer and we bought the property. And we immediately evicted the used car dealer and got them out of there. We cleaned up the lot. And then we worked with Frank Trainer over at Commonwealth Building, who needed some extra parking. And we divided off the back of the lot and actually sold that piece to Frank, so he was able to park his vans, which are now fully corralled and fenced, which is nice. And then we built ourselves a new office building on the corner. So now this is our offices in the front, and then next door we actually have 6 units that are attached to that. This is the parking lot you see along Willard Street. Behind us directly is 109 California Ave, and that was the 12-unit building I mentioned, and here's the 10-unit building which we started with in the neighborhood. This area is very important to Scott and I. We grew up in the neighborhood, and frankly, I'm here 10 hours a day, so I still live directly in this neighborhood. And it was interesting, I was just telling Mrs. Spring, when we used to come and as kids, we'd come down to on Halloween, and we wouldn't go down this street. It was just too darn scary. You know, with the collapsing house in the middle and the industrial, and that used to be, you remember, Antonelli Ironworks. So it wasn't someplace you felt comfortable walking as a 12 or a 14-year-old. So when we were able to come in and we cleaned that up, and we cleaned this up, and we cleaned this up, we were pretty happy with everything going on. This house was, at that time, Mr. Welch was living there. He owned it with his siblings, it's my understanding. And for whatever reason, death in the family, they decided to sell the house. And we had heard that there were several developers interested in the site. And they wanted to build a row of townhouses on Bates Ave, which we didn't really feel was conducive to what we had started doing at this end of the property. So, so we made an offer and we purchased the home with really no plans for it, other than the fact that we didn't want to see it developed wrong. So we bought the property and we sat on it for a while. And we actually had a group come over from Ireland, and I think, Jay, you met them.
Nice guys.
And they were footballers, and they came over to play in the cultural center. So they spent a little more than a season with us. And they moved out, and we went into the house, and even before we had moved in the house, it had never been taken care of. It hadn't been kept up, and it needs an awful lot of work. So then you can imagine after 6 footballers living there, it needed even more work. So we were looking at it and said, well, you know what really makes sense there is to kind of continue the pattern that we've started in the neighborhood, which is to construct another building, similar to the 2 buildings we already have. Something that would again complement the investment we've already made in this area. So the thought was that what really fits here nicely is the 109 California Ave building. The density is 12 units, but it has the height of only a 2.5-story building. So it doesn't have that towering feeling of a brick office, a brick apartment building. And the way it sits on the corner, it'll be in line with the other houses, other buildings on the street. And if you haven't been by lately, so here's a picture of 109 California. So there's 4 units on each floor, it's 3 levels, it's walk up, there's no elevator. And the design is that, just like the other 2 buildings, the parking would be behind the building. We'd continue the landscape front right up the street. We'd install curbing, which there was never curbing on California Ave. We curbed both sides of California Ave. We actually paved California Ave. This portion of it, when we built the second building, we paved from Willard Street up to Bates. So our intention is to continue the design, continue the flavor of what we've begun, which wraps all the way down to Willard Street, and bring that up and wrap that right around the corner of Bates. And the opportunity to do that is here. The market is good for these units. These aren't the high-price units that you see being built in some of the big projects. You know, I hate to say that $1,800 is an average rent, but that really is a very affordable rent these days for a 2-bedroom apartment. And the location is good. We've got the bus stop at the bottom of the hill, and then you've got access on highways in both directions. So that's our thought process, and that's our plan. And so that's what we present with you tonight. We want to hear some, your thoughts and your concerns. And just to touch on what Brian said, we did apply to the planning board and the zoning board at their recommendation, because there's so much going on in the city, you gotta just get in for a placeholder. So we are on it, but that doesn't mean that we can't modify our application. So if we have any good suggestions or comments, I'm glad to.
Let me start with my concern that you were trick-or-treating at age 14.
12, I said 12.
Well, I thought you were the
12 to
older.
14. No.
Oh, you're the older?
Yeah.
Oh, I like you better. Anybody have anything they want to ask about the project? Comments, questions? Quiet group.
I have a quick question. How much parking will there be?
So there's 12 units, we had 16 spaces. But the nice thing about the location is it overflows into our other building. So we actually have 24 spaces back here. It's never more than half full at best. Most of the time, again, these type of users have 1 car, not 2. But then we have walkways. If you'll notice, there's actually a walkway here. There's a walkway from down here, so that if there was ever a problem on any of the properties, you can actually share these and walk back and even use the commercial parking lot. So we've got the ability to handle it. But 16 spaces, I would imagine that we're gonna have 1 car per unit. Some people will have 2 cars. We give them 1 assigned parking space and the other is floating, so that they don't tie up spaces that somebody could be using if they were there. But everybody gets at least 1 assigned parking space, and we tell them that's what they're welcome to have. the rest is available again.
So 12 units, just to follow up on that question, unless you wanted to.
Go ahead.
Okay, so 12 units is what you're proposing?
Yep.
1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms?
2 bed.
2 bedrooms. So under the zoning, you have to have what, 1.5 space per?
It's interesting, this is actually a business zone. So, yeah, that's all
So-
we're required, is the
so-
1.5.
Arguably,
Yeah.
residential doesn't even belong there, but if you apply
Well,
a
well,
residential B standard.
It's
to-
residence B, so it is allowed by special permit. In the residence is, so it
Okay.
is allowed. However, the parking goes back directly to the business, in which, when the city was, in all its wisdom, updated the zoning code, never addressed the fact that they didn't address the parking to go along with the zoning.
I feel like that was a dig at me, because I was around when we updated the zoning.
I didn't think that,
See?
no.
I don't know.
But
No, but so
getting
to the bottom line.
Technically, we're 2 spaces short
Okay.
from what we're required to have.
And so your argument there is that you have enough overflow between the buildings that it would work, even though you're too short?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
What's the total when you say the overflow? So you have 3 units, 10, 12, and you're proposing another 12, right? And then
Yeah.
you have 6 in your building, and you have your office building as yourself. Is there anybody else in your office building?
Yeah, there's a tenant downstairs.
Okay, so what's the total number of parking that you have in all your units?
I haven't added up my head, but it's 24, that'd be 48. I think we have 26 down there, 48, 68, 74, and 16 would be 84, 90 spaces.
And how many units?
We've got 10, 22, 6 is 28, and then there would be 12 more, so that would be 40 units.
So it would still be above, that's more than 2, so total, it would be more than 2 cars
So,
per
yeah,
unit.
exactly, yeah.
How many people are in the office?
All right,
So
one
you're-
question at a time,
So just out of
Councilor.
curiosity, this is a follow-up, so
Yeah.
I'll.
There are 3
quiet it.
people in our office, there's 2 people in the office downstairs. So if everybody came home at the same time and the office was full at the same time,
And no
you still
guests.
have plenty of parking.
But no guests.
And, well, you're welcome to have guests because there's still more parking.
I'm just asking, so.
Yeah, no, and that's a good question, but parking has never been an issue on these buildings.
And as you know, there's a different demand for office
I
use
do.
and the residential, and that's something the city's been doing, as you know. You know, in consideration of parking, shared parking opportunities. So this is perfect for shared parking.
Carol, your question, comment?
It sounds great, shared parking, but people tend to become territorial even if they're renting. How do you assure that that's going to happen without any problems? Is there some kind of process,
Well,
or is
again,
it written into their,
It's written into the lease, they have 1 assigned parking space, and the rest of them are free to be used by anybody else.
on any of the
On
properties?
any of the properties, yeah.
And that will be directly in the lease?
The availability is in the, I don't know that we specifically say you can park across the street, but pretty much, again, we.
I mean, like I said, it
No,
sounds great, but 10
yeah.
years from now,
I understand, but yeah, that's not a problem that, I think it's just always been understood, but we've never had to address it in writing, because again, parking has never been a problem. Nobody ever parks on California. We don't ever have a car out there unless somebody's
well,
dropping
like I
off.
said,
a pickup.
things change, so.
And again, and we're anticipating that, and that's why we're comfortable that we've kind of nipped that in the bud by having enough parking available on the other properties. And again, these people will be assigned 1 parking space, so that's what they know they have is 1 car.
Questions, comments? Over to you.
Actually, I do have another question. Before, oh, by the way, Jim O'Leary, I live in Bates Ave, I'm just on the other side of the highway. Before I ask my question, I have some comments I would like to make. Every morning, around 8 o'clock, I go out for coffee down to Donut King. This morning, I had to wait for 6 cars to go by before I could pull out of my driveway. One day last week, it was 10 cars. I never just pull out of the driveway. And that's before this development and the ones down the end of the street. We're gonna be putting another 40
Which
or
one's
50.
down the end of the street you're referring
The ones that are going out.
to? The one that's already gone, okay. I didn't know if you were talking about a proposal.
No, no.
Okay, got it.
It's not a proposal,
Yeah.
but nothing's built there yet. My understanding is that
That's your project, right?
I guess I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
okay, yeah.
my understanding is that the car rental, well, they're gone, that's gonna be torn down, and there's gonna be another building or parking or something put in there. basically, my issue is traffic, okay? Twice last week, when I came down to Bates Ave to Willard Street, my light was red. So I stopped for the light, which is kind of unusual these days, but with the traffic there, you really have to stop. So I did. And I've also learned when the light turns green, you don't cross the street, you wait. Twice last week, I would have been hit if I had crossed on the green light. I mean, this is just typical. Cars, cars, cars. All we're doing now is we're taking two-car property. I mean, everybody I know except for Kathy on our street has 2 cars there. Everybody.
At least 2 cars,
Well, yeah, I know, next to you is 4.
at least.
And we're taking 2 cars that was there, and we're gonna put, what'd you say, 12?
16.
I would say there's probably gonna be at least 18, probably 24 cars there, and there'll be another 50 down there. And I guess we're getting to my question. My question is, in order for me to go out and get coffee in the morning, I'm gonna have to have a light installed on Bates Avenue at my driveway so I can get out without waiting. And my question is, what do I have to do to start that process? Because I know it's gonna take a long time.
So it's less for Sean, more for me, but I think the sentiment that you're expressing is clear to Sean as well, relative
I
to
mean,
this.
it's traffic.
Yeah, no, so I'm gonna take the question as facetious and answer you in a way. Yeah, well,
I'm not sure it's totally facetious.
well, all right, well, in terms of the traffic, there are 3 things that I hear most from people on a regular basis. It's condition of our roads, overdevelopment of the city, and traffic. Those are the 3 big ones. In
I'm
my
not gonna argue.
Yeah, no, nor am I. I live in the city, I drive around it too. So, yes. I mean, I'm not gonna make excuses in terms of there being cars on the street. Where you guys are at, you know, there's a couple of issues. There's a commuter traffic issue, which, you know, it's, yeah, right. It's like swatting at flies, right? You
You
keep
can put
killing
up-
them and they keep coming back and you keep killing them, and so we do enforcement on that. But beyond that, there's a density issue in terms of how many people live in a city, and people are driving. You know, the economy's good, everybody's working. As kids get older, there's more cars coming and going in from houses. It's definitely a problem that we have in the city. Now, I don't know that that's Sean Galvin's fault. Maybe to some degree it is. But in terms of this project, that's something that you folks should all take into consideration in terms of whether or not you want to voice support, voice opposition, or take no position at all when they go for permitting. What we were talking about, and when we're talking about parking and zoning, the city has regulations set up that I was a part of. It was a very comprehensive process to recodify the entire zoning of what can be built where, how high things can be, how dense things can be, and how many parking spaces they need. So I always ask the questions of how many bedrooms, how many parking spaces on any project that people are doing a presentation to, because more often than not, these projects are seeking variances from the zoning board. What a variance is permission to not follow the zoning code. So we put a lot of time and effort into establishing the zoning code. And if you go to the ZBA meetings, just about every project there is seeking to, or every petition there is seeking to deviate from the zoning code. So if we held more to the zoning code, arguably things would be in better condition in terms of traffic, in terms of perhaps development and density. So I guess I'm giving you the answer as a city councilor, right? And so what I do in terms of what impact I could have. We wrote zoning code. It's up to the zoning board, which is a part of the executive branch, because the mayor appoints the zoning board members, so it's a part of the executive branch, not the legislative, which Ann and I are in. So we passed the regulations that we thought, in terms of zoning, that we thought were reasonable, and that they would control growth in a way that made sense for the city. As it relates to traffic, we approved within the last year or so funding for a citywide traffic plan for engineers to go out and take a look at traffic all over the city and see what we can do to move traffic across the city better, to better regulate and enforce existing traffic regulations, which, I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'm gonna guess there's not a better way to move traffic from this neighborhood down to Willard, right? It is what it is. All these people live here.
They're
There's
not
only
gonna
so
go to
many-
Willard in the
Right.
morning.
No,
Don't
no,
worry
no,
about
but,
it.
but in terms of engineering, we can try and find better solutions to the cut-through traffic that comes off the highway, right? So it's something certainly that the city's looking at in terms of trying to make things better and improve the conditions that we see. I don't think there's anybody in city government, you know, city council, the mayor, or anybody who doesn't see this as an issue, the traffic, the development, where it's happening, how it's happening, and the condition of our roadways. I mean, like I said, those are the top three things that I hear about. And it's something we're working on. But you be the judge of whether or not this project, how this fits in. You know, how this fits into that, whether or not you think it helps, it hurts, whether you think it hurt, if you think it hurts, whether you think it hurts too much, you know? And living right there, I get you concerned, and absolutely.
I have a question, maybe this is the wrong place for the question, but how is a variance approved?
The zoning board, so it's a,
Yeah, but what are their requirements? There must be certain requirements that have to be made before a variance can be approved.
I'm sure Sean's paying Ed Fleming by the hour here, so we might as well make him earn his pay. Ed, why don't you take that, being the permitting attorney?
The zoning board determines whether the relief that's requested is appropriate or will have a detrimental impact to the neighborhood in determining that. So they'll consider things like, you know, traffic impact or parking impact. They'll consider the overall density of the development or the setbacks that are being requested. In this particular case, we're really looking for the density and we're looking for setbacks. Because the site is located on a corner has two front setbacks, so it really requires that the building be really pushed back a lot further from the site than is appropriate here. So we're asking for some variances there. So they consider really the detrimental impact of the development on the community, if there is such a thing. And in this particular case, it goes through two levels of meetings and review. The planning board does a really in-depth review, much more in-depth even than the zoning board of appeals does. So by the time the zoning board gets it, an independent peer review engineer has already reviewed all of the plans. They've looked at traffic impact, they looked at parking, they looked at the design of the development, making sure that drainage has been appropriately addressed and all of those issues. And they then make a recommendation to the planning board, and the planning department makes a recommendation for approval on the site, what they call site plan review. And then it goes to the zoning board. So the zoning board has the benefit of having the planning board and an independent peer review engineer reviewing all the things that are important to determine whether or not it's gonna have a detrimental impact.
And so an important distinction that I just want to make sure people know, and I always try to explain this, is a planning board and site plan review is more of a, the question is, to the planning board is more is how? You know, how does this look? How would you like it to look? Kind of thing. It's not a yes or no. The planning board can't really say, no, project can't move forward, denied, go away. Site plan review is more how. You know, maybe they need more parking, they make a recommendation for more parking, maybe they need more landscaping, drainage, whatever it is. It's how, it's more engineering. The zoning board, on the other hand, is a yes or no. It's, do we grant this variance? Yes or no. If they don't grant the variance, then the project as proposed couldn't move forward. If they say yes, then the project could move forward. And as I said at the opening, both of those meetings take public comment. And I always encourage people to weigh in if you have feelings about it. That's why I will notify everyone of when those meetings are. You can appear, you can speak, you can send a letter, you can send an email. And I'll tell you, the zoning board and the planning board value public input. It's not a kind of, okay, let's hear them out and, you know, we'll do whatever we're gonna do. It's really not. It's an open process. And the members of the zoning board all live in the city of Quincy. You know, they're all residents. They care what other residents think. They'll all go out, the members of the planning board, the members of the zoning board, they'll go out, they'll drive around the neighborhood, different times, they'll look at it and see what the impact is, especially if you submit letters ahead of time and say, hey, listen, traffic's a real problem here. That's, you know, they'll put their antennas up into what they should be looking at.
The only thing that I want to add is that they look at the impact of the proposal that they're reviewing, not on traffic conditions throughout the city. I think everybody here would say we have a lot of traffic in Quincy. So they don't look at whether there's a lot of traffic in Quincy, they look at, does this
That's a major issue. But
Right.
let me tell you another little story. When my mother brought me home from the hospital when I was born, she brought me home to 115 Bates Ave. I learned to ride a bicycle on 115 Bates Avenue. 3 or 4 years ago, I decided to fish the canal with a canal cruiser bicycle. I got halfway across the bridge. I live right beside the bridge, and I had to turn around and come back, because I was afraid the traffic was gonna kill me. And the difference is, they put in 10 units at a time over 40 years, and that's 400 units. That never would have been approved at one time. But over 20, 30 years, you can do anything you want. And that's wrong. That's a mistake.
It's a good observation in terms of perhaps one of the failings in how these boards review individual projects is that it's not, they're not, as what Ed said, they're looking at, so what does this project do? But it's not looking at, so what is this project, with this project, with this project, and this project? Which arguably isn't fair to the one guy asking for his project, but the city would need to do a better job of looking at that. I don't disagree with you, and I'll add that we, in particular, in West Quincy, have gotten whacked during this last development period. I think the last time I saw the planning department did a map of proposed or approved and recently built development across the entire city. And so I look at it as a nice map, it told you where they are, how many units, and I'm looking at it, and in my head I always thought that we get more than our fair share of development in South and West Quincy. And I went through and counted, and then I did the percentage, and this is about a year ago, but something along the lines of 62 or 64% of all new units that were developed in that time period on this map were all in Ward 4, or directly abutting Ward 4. So, I mean, that's certainly an issue, and half of the city drives through this part of the city to get out of the city. So we have that as well.
And back in.
Yeah, and back in, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I have a solution or that it's an easy problem to fix. I suppose all I can say is, in terms of the global aspect unrelated to this project, is that I'm aware of it, the city's aware of it, we're trying to find some solutions to the traffic situations across the city. And it also dovetails with an effort that the mayor announced, I think earlier this week, that we're gonna be revamping the parking system, residential parking system that we have in the city. Because there's another thing where we have outdated rules and regulations, and the parking program we have it's barely enforced, if it's enforceable at all, because it just doesn't meet the needs of the city and the size that we're at, We're a small city with a lot of people living in it. And I hesitate to share with you what we've received presentations at the council about the need for housing in this area. And the Globe started to pick up on this a little bit more, and the mayor of Boston has been kind of banging this drum, that over the next 20 years, we need some insane amount of like 100,000 more units in the greater Boston area to support the
You're gonna need wider
inevitable growth.
roads.
Right, and we're not an Arizona community that, got developed in 1964. I mean, we're an old city with
Absolutely.
narrow streets and small neighborhoods, and, you wouldn't, if you gave an engineer a clean slate and said, design me a city of X by X, that's the size of Quincy, I trust they wouldn't lay it out like the way we have it laid out, because it's come naturally, and it hasn't come with a global approach to how we've done development across the city. And I think that's a failing on the city, and I'm happy to take what credit I deserve on that. That if I've played some role in not having a global view of things, but I do think that the project, as it relates to that, needs to be decided by you all and by the zoning board and the planning board for what it is and what it ties into that already exists. So I mean, I'll leave it at that. I mean, we're not gonna solve all the problems today, and I'm happy to talk to anybody more about it, certainly you, Jim, too. But yeah, I feel like I'm talking way too much. The little voice in my head is like, okay, wrap it up, so,
You blame me on that.
yeah, I know. Go ahead.
So the Bates Ave, California Ave intersection is a bad intersection. I pull out of California Ave onto Bates Ave every afternoon, taking the right from California onto Bates, because I can't use Grove to make the left turn onto Bates to get home. So I'm forced to go down Willard Street, up California Ave, and that's a very bad intersection there. If cars start parking on the street there, it's going to make it a lot worse and a lot more dangerous.
I don't disagree with that. And let me just follow up with you on that. Why is it dangerous? Is it the speed of the cars, or is it the way that the street is when you're taking that right?
Both.
Both, okay. Okay. As it relates to parking on the street, you know, we can add signs that say do not park, and if a car's parked there, we can tell them. Like, I'm sure Sean's gonna tell
Parking
them.
permit.
People can't read, signs do no good.
Well, when they see their car driving in the back of a tow truck down the street, that usually proves the point, but it's okay, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I don't wanna,
That's all right,
I'm not trying to take over the meeting.
don't worry about it. Like I said, everyone gets to be heard, everyone gets to ask questions, weigh in, I'm fine with that.
I think I
That's how
have
we do
a
it.
question for Mr. Galvin. But
Good.
first, again, I always make a comment before I ask my question. And the first thing I like to say is, what you've done there so far is a vast improvement over what was there. Thank you for that. Now, my second question, my real question here is, if you don't get a variance, what can you build there?
Well, you know, and that's what it comes down to. Basically, it's own business B. So its highest and best use after multi-residential would be some type of a commercial building in terms of preserving the value. And that's by right.
By right means no approval, in terms of no asking
And
for a variance.
I'm not saying that's a threat. We have no intention.
But there's setbacks
The
to
first
that,
thing
too.
I saw.
Yeah, but you could get a 5,000 square foot warehouse building on the side.
Right.
And nobody wants that, and I don't want that, because we've got an investment here, so I don't want to, that's not what we're looking to do. You asked a question, I give you an answer. In terms of doing this is really the highest and best use for this site. Because again, if we don't do this and we're gonna sell it, you're probably gonna end up with a row of townhouses on Bates Ave. Because they can do 4 units there, sell them for more money than I can afford to do this particular project for. And what you end up with there at that point is an intersection wherein, I don't mean to put Jay on the spot, but Jay's house sticks right out into the intersection of Bates and California Ave. But it was there first, so that's.
180 years ago. 180 years.
Yeah, so that road get sharpened and sharpened and sharpened over the years, and I have the same problem. If you come up California Avenue and try to take that right on Bates, and you put your nose up, and all of a sudden somebody comes by at 50 miles an hour.
Yes.
So it's
I
going
absolutely-
that way, though.
I
That's the thing.
absolutely agree,
Talk about
absolutely agree
enforcement.
with that.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I do everything I can not to have to take that turn, not even to go left on that street,
But
because it's so
I'm
hard
for
to
it's
see.
the only way I can get home.
Yeah, well,
I can barely get
the
home
left at the-
legally.
The left at the light stops there's no left turn after a particular time, all right?
4 to 6.
4 to 6, which was meant to stop the cut-through traffic, but wasn't really thoughtful by the previous ward councilor. That was not your fault.
I think it was 2 councils ago, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I always say that when a council leaves office, all the signs he put up should come down and we start again.
Nobody pays attention to the sign anyway. I
Yeah,
mean,
especially the no left turn at the top of the, and I understand, I agree 100%.
top and bottom.
The residents pay attention to
Yeah,
it.
that's
No
right.
one
The
else
homeowners
does.
do, absolutely, and I'll tell you that, you know, I'm gonna tell you, the people who live here, these aren't transient apartment people. These people come and they stay. A lot of these people, Mr. Walker in this building, he's been there since we built the building. It's a different style of living than when you're going up 10 stories, and I don't want to badmouth any of the other big projects in town, but it's a different type of person who lives there than lives in a garden-style unit like this. They feel a little bit more community, they feel a little bit more neighborhood, that's why they want to live this way. We like those tenants, and we screen these tenants, we screen them very hard. And we've had very little problem over there. In fact, before the meeting, I looked up to see how many police and ambulance calls, and we've actually only had 1 police call in the time since we've owned it.
And there was someone complaining about their landlord.
Yeah. That was fun. No, but,
Justifiably so.
Yeah, So from
Say
that.
$1,800 is, as Sean was saying, it's a bargain in Quincy.
Yeah.
The downtown ones are what, $2,800 a month
Sure,
for?
well, just Quarry
I mean,
Street
it's-
starts in the high, in
Yeah.
the low twos, you know, it's expensive. I mean, it's expensive to live in Quincy, and us, you know, I'm a homeowner and you guys are too. We're fortunate to be able to have the homes we have, because if we had to buy them all over again today, they'd be much more expensive and maybe prohibitive in some cases. This is an option for people to be able to live in the city and enjoy the neighborhoods. We think we provide a need, fill a need in this style of unit. We think we provide them to, and we do, in fact, a lot of our folks are Quincy folks that move in. So, you know, from that standpoint, I'm gonna say I think this is a great project from that standpoint. Traffic is horrible, I agree with you, because I live up on Beverly Street, I have to come down and go through the Rotary just to get to work in the morning. And people get off the highway, they get onto Willard Street, they think they're gonna save time and get back on at East Milton or Granite or down at Morrissey Boulevard, and they don't. All they do is cause trouble for the rest of us. So what happened is, once they figured out they can take Willard Street, well, then Willard Street's back. Now they found out they can take Bates Ave. So, you know, not so much of that is really our own fault living in the neighborhood. It's really the people who are trying to get through our neighborhood and get through Quincy. And, you know, that's unfair. It's happening on 3A, it happens down on Quincy Shore Drive, it happens here on Willard Street. We all suffer. You know, it's just we happen to be in the way of getting to Boston. I don't think that 12 units here is going to make that much worse or much better, certainly. But at the same time, it's not the problem. You know, the problem comes from
But it's not gonna make
much
it any
bigger
better.
things. No, it's not gonna make it better. But for the most part, I think you're gonna see these people are gonna come out and come this way and come down to Willard Street.
They're not going to Willard Street.
Well,
I could,
it depends
yesterday
on where they're
morning, I
going.
couldn't go when the light turned green because they were right in front of me.
And again, all I say is that at some point, they're gonna come out and either go left or right. Half of them are gonna go left, half of them are gonna go right, from that standpoint. So, you know, I hope that it's not a detriment, and I certainly don't want your life to be any harder because of our project. But at the same time, I think we're offering and filling a need. You know, Brian doesn't wanna talk about the numbers, but they're talking about a need for 3,000 to 4,000 units in the city of Quincy by 2025. You just think that's on top of what's already either been built or proposed. So, yeah, a massive traffic plan for the entire city of Quincy is absolutely necessary. 12 units on Bates Ave, I don't think it's gonna make a Hills Beans a difference. That's my opinion, and I'm the proponent, so of course.
So we can't believe that.
I don't.
Can I ask you a quick question? If your setback, what's your setback from, for a variance? Is it 25 feet in front of each side?
Yeah, it's 25 feet all around,
Yeah.
and that,
What would that change from your 12 units if you had to, if you didn't get granted the variance?
Well, we wouldn't build
So you just wouldn't go
it, we just wouldn't build it. No, that's not an option.
there?
The bigger issue is the zoning.
No, no,
I
I know.
mean, setbacks, the biggest is incredibly minor comparatively. It's not even a residential zone site.
I understand that, Brian.
Right.
I'm just asking the
the
question.
corner really creates that difficulty.
No, I know it
and
does. I live in a
hardship,
corner.
yeah.
I live in a corner.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I had to follow the setbacks as well.
Any other thoughts, questions? Really?
It's a good one. How long will
Hold
it
on, let's
take?
make sure that the real people, make sure.
It's a good question. It's a good question. How long will the project take to build?
This project, somewhere between, I would say, 4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months?
Yeah, depending on the weather.
And it's gonna be apartments, you
It's
said?
gonna be apartments.
Okay, thank you.
Beyond the zoning and planning board, we also have to go to the Affordable Housing Trust. We'll be committing 1 unit as an affordable unit.
On site?
On site.
That never happens.
Well,
Glad to
we
hear
also
that.
have one on site here and on site here. We've had those 2 affordable units since we built those buildings. We've been able to fill them with good people that get along with market rate people without any trouble.
I'll get on my soapbox here. Affordable doesn't mean poor.
No.
I mean, we're talking about $2,800, get you an apartment in Quincy. Affordable is like teachers and, you know, police officers and
So
folks
the-
who have regular jobs. It's regular folks. Affordable these days is regular folks. It doesn't mean people without jobs, people, you know, who.
So instead of 1,800, what would it?
The real number here is $1,400 instead of 18, so it's
That's-
400 a month, so it's
yeah.
$4,800 a year.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of change.
That's real savings.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right, so why don't we break up the kind of formal, if people want to come up and look at pictures or give Ed a hard time or ask Sean more
But
questions.
usually Brian does that.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one more question? I promise
Yeah.
this was asked me. So, this is not from your development. So next year development, I know you're doing, is it 2 buildings you're doing?
No, I'm not, I don't have a proposal. We made a presentation, the proposal's off the table, it's not moving forward
But you
right now.
did, so,
yeah.
but you have, is it 3 or 2?
Why don't we break up and talk about that, because I don't want to put Ed on the spot.
Well, let me-
He's
let
here,
me- let me
no,
say-
but, no, hold on a second, he's here representing a client on a different project, I'm not gonna put him on the
Yeah.
spot on the properties that he owns.
I'm happy to talk with you about
Yeah,
that.
we'll break up and we can ask those questions in kind of an informal way, I don't feel like that's fair. Do you have a question before we break up?
No, of course,
Comment?
just a
Okay.
thought. You know, as a fifth-generation Quincy resident, I came home 7 years ago to caretake my mother, who just passed, as most of you know. I lived in that house, she lived in that house, 98 California, for 90 years. 90 years. I knew the Gillises very well, I knew the Welches very well, I knew Perkins, I knew them all, they were my neighbors. We wouldn't be here tonight if the children of those families didn't want to sell the houses and Progress didn't do what it did. So it's not anything to do with the Galvins do a great job, because I'm their neighbor. I see what they do. But what I see here is a tale of two cities. The change. I know the O'Learys like this, and I know everyone here, the Barrys, what have you. When you hit that bridge and go over, it's another world. And now where I am, it's changing dramatically as the city's changing. That's why I came home. I found the problem with the drug and the homelessness, all the craziness that goes on. I'm in multiple businesses in the city. But to the Galvin's credit, I see that they work with the community, at least in where I am, where I know what they do. I see that they take care of their properties, I see what they treat the people well, they were very respectful to my mother, and I commend them on that. So I think going forward, whatever they're gonna do well as far as aesthetically building. Now the traffic, I couldn't agree with you more, because I'm right in the middle of it. And it's just horrendous, but you know, the big problem, and I think I was with this young lady here at a meeting, maybe it wasn't you, but when they talk, it's that left-hand turn up there that is just like an onslaught of traffic. And I understand Willard Street, and you can say it's development, you can say it's overbuilding, whatever it is. But, you know, it's gotta be done. And I just hope the right people get the opportunity to do that. And I don't wanna leave my home. I'll just put that on the table right now. I'm a very friendly guy, I'm a very nice guy. I'm representing 50 people tonight. My extended brothers and sisters that are in New York and California, and my family's at odds with the property. You know, but I'm there, I'm not going anywhere. You know, I came home here and I found myself again at St. Mary's Church, and Ann and all you fine people, and it brought me back to where I came from. And this is Fee Du, one of the more prominent members of the community from the North Shore down here doing multiple businesses. She said, let's go see, because she's my mother's adopted daughter. And she says, I'm there for Pearl. So my mother lives tonight, and it's great to be in your company here, and I hope that we can all work together to make this city better, because it continues to be a great city. But it's the tale of two cities, multiple cities now. And I know exactly where you're coming from, because my Aunt Bee's up on Argonne Street. And I'm there every day, and I go by your house. Beautiful, beautiful. You know, and your lovely wife is out there, and your daughters who I've sold their prom gowns to, and the mayor's nieces, and everybody else. It's a great city to be, and I want to be part of it. I'm not going anywhere. I'll put that on the table tonight. Do we understand
Glad
that?
to hear
Okay,
Glad to
thank
hear
you.
And that's a great closing note.
I'm with you.
Obviously, you have all.
Galvins are great. It's all good.
And welcome back.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks. You shut that off.